out here. Thank you all. We, the Security Council signatories of the Statement of Shared Commitments for the Principle of Women, Peace, and Security, WPS, Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, France, Gabon, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and the United States have come together to express grave concern regarding the use of sexual and gender-based violence as a strategy and tactic by terrorist groups such as Daesh. We underscore conflict-related sexual violence can constitute a violation of international law. As we heard today from the civil society briefer who courageously shared her personal story of survival from conflict-related sexual violence, groups committing terrorist acts are using SGBV as a political tool and a tactic of terrorism disproportionately affecting women and girls and undermining human rights. This gruesome, dehumanizing tactic is rooted in misogynistic ideologies and part of a strategy used by terrorist groups to fuel instability, fracture and control communities, support terrorist financing and recruitment. We know these acts of violence disproportionately impact women and girls. Terrorist groups target women civil society leaders, women peace builders, and human rights defenders with SGBV, including online, to stifle their advocacy and curtail their participation in peace and security processes. And too many perpetrators of sexual and gender-based violence are not held to account, a prominent issue in the recent ARIA formula meeting of the Council on enhancing the capacities of member states to ensure a gender-responsive approach to counterterrorism. Across the international system, we must continue to act, and with urgency. We encourage the Counterterrorism Committee Executive Directorate, CTED, to continue its important work integrating gender as a cross-cutting issue, holding consultations with women and women's organizations, and enhancing gender-sensitive research. We commend CTED's ongoing work on SGBV in terrorist contexts, and we welcome the establishment of the Human Rights and Gender section of the UN Office of Counter-Terrorism, which is working to effectively counter the instrumentalization of gender by terrorist groups and support the elimination of sexual violence as a terrorist tactic. And we highlight the renewed emphasis in the 8th review of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy on a thorough gender analysis for the prevention of terrorism and the important role women-led civil society organizations play in countering terrorism. Let me be clear. When we empower women and apply gender-responsive approaches, we help advance international peace and security. As council members, we will stand together with the survivors of sexual and gender-based violence and reaffirm our commitment to prioritize their rights and needs as a moral and humanitarian imperative and as a pressing matter of international peace and security. Today, also, the WPS shared commitment signatories also come together to express our grave concern regarding the continued reports of gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence in Sudan's conflict. Following the outbreak of conflict in April, multiple entities have reported systematic and widespread use of sexual and gender-based violence, including rape, kidnapping, sexual exploitation, and other forms of SGBV, especially in Darfur, but also in other areas of Sudan, including in Khartoum. Women and girls are facing violence and harassment as they flee from one state to another. Homes have been looted, and reports of domestic violence are on the rise. We strongly condemn the use of SGBV and call for the immediate cessation of violence against civilians. And we call on all parties to the conflict to end any violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law, including those involving sexual violence. We echo High Commissioner Turk's statement this past week: perpetrators must be held accountable. And we continue to reiterate the need for the parties to immediately cease hostilities, facilitate humanitarian access, and establish a permanent ceasefire arrangement. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today.
Madam Ambassador, today the Security Council was talking about the fight against terrorism. With the death of Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin and the future of Wagner's mercenary military operations in countries including Mali, Burkina Faso, where terrorism is rampant and the future is in question, what should the United States and its partners be doing to try to stabilize the situation in those countries, including Niger?
You know, we have been working very, very closely with all of our partners and our allies in the region, the regional leaders, in particular ECOWAS, to find a diplomatic path to ending the conflict and bringing back a democratically elected government and institutions in Niger. I really don't have any comment on Wagner. Our position on Wagner is very well known. Their actions and their activities in Africa are destabilizing, and we've encouraged countries in Africa to condemn their presence as well as their actions. Thank you.
How will this death affect the drawdown of MINUSMA then? Are you worried that it'll have a negative impact on peacekeeping forces there?
We have been worried that MINUSMA's drawdown will have an impact on stability and peace in Mali. I don't have any, again, comment on Prigozhin's death. Our views on the destabilizing role they play are clear.